Morning, everyone. Thank you for jumping on and for being present in person. Before we start the meeting, just wanted to open it up to our interpreter for any instructions you may have for folks to access interpretation. Okay, well, for folks online, there should be a little globe at the bottom of this call that you can use to choose your language interpretation of preference.
Podrán ver un botón al bajo de la pantalla que les permitirá seleccionar su idioma de preferencia.
Thank you. So I'm James Pobiwa, and welcome to the November
Soy
14th.
James Povihua.
Oh, and I think we may not be doing simultaneous interpretation. One second.
It should be simultaneous now. She said, please disable me. So I disabled it, but I think that was backwards. I don't think she needed to be disabled. I think we're good.
Great. Excellent. Thanks, everyone. So again, I'm James Pobiwa, and this is the November 14th meeting of the Sustainable Economy Advisory Council. I will now take roll call of our council members. James Pobiwa, I am here. Daisy Maldonado.
Present.
Thank you. Patricia Knighton. Glenn Schiffbauer.
Present.
Thank you. Rob Black.
Present.
Thank you. Cassie Arias.
I'm here.
Thank you. Jonathan Perry. Mayani Barudin.
Present.
Thank you. Atsa Chavez. Wendy Apsity.
Here.
Thank you. Janine Niazi.
Present.
Thank you. Joseph Little is excused. Marissa Naranjo.
I'm present.
Thank you. Today on our agenda, we will be taking up approval of minutes at our next meeting in December. Those minutes will be sent out for folks to review. We'll do an introduction of a new staff member supporting the council and the task force. We'll have a presentation from Rob Black on some prospective legislation. Some comments from Wendy Apsity on previous item from last month's meeting. We'll also do a review of our future meeting, which will be a joint session with the Sustainable Economy Task Force. And another item from Kayla Lucero Matucci. Open for discussion. We'll also have public comment and then adjourn. Can I get an approval to approve the agenda? Or excuse me, a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved, Rob Black.
Thank you. A second.
Jonathan Perry, second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you all. So I'm very excited to introduce today a new member of the Economic Development Department, Kayla Lucero Matucci, who joined in just the last couple of weeks. And she holds the title now of Sustainable Economy Advisory Council and Task Force. Actually, I'm getting your title wrong, so I'll leave that to you as you introduce yourself. But Kayla, please introduce yourself to the council and welcome.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kayla Lucero Matucci, and I'm originally from Placitas and Albuquerque, New Mexico. I recently moved back to take up this role of Just Transition Advisor, and I'm excited to work with you all. I think it's an exciting time to bring together some of the work that you've done, and I'm glad that I'll be part of facilitating that and making use of the excellent presentations that we all have had so far.
Thank you, Kayla. Appreciate it. Looking forward to working with you. And this also rounds out a really excellent team that EDD has been able to put together. So we're going to continue to have Shawnee as a representative of EDD. And we also have support from Michael Guerrero from the Center for Civic Policy. So I'm so happy that we are at increased capacity to get this work done. Next on the agenda, we wanted to just jump into, I may be jumping ahead of our schedule and don't want to do that. Actually, no, right. Wanted to invite Council Member Rob Black from the New Mexico Chamber of Commerce to discuss some prospective legislation. And we've sort of previewed at our last meeting. So over to you, Rob.
Thank you, James. It's a pleasure to talk about this. And I did circulate to the group through the meeting invite a document. There's copies of that, not on letterhead, but copies of that here in the office. And I just wanted to put that out as something to reference as we have this conversation. Currently in New Mexico, we have created a really important pathway from basically prenatal through college, supporting New Mexicans and ensuring that they have access to early childhood education programs, childcare, all the way to the Opportunity Scholarship funding 2- and 4-year degrees. As we were working this last year to build out a program that we launched actually last week, our Be Pro, Be Proud Career Technical Engagement Program in partnership with Workforce Solutions, we found a hole in this important structure supporting New Mexicans, and it's a really important one. What we discovered is when the language for the Opportunity Scholarship was being drafted, the legislators wanted to make sure that we were funding certifications, career-based certifications. When that language was actually drafted, it was drafted to say they will fund career-based certifications that are part of a credit-based certification. How that's interpreted is it must be part of a 2- or 4-year degree. What that means is, and that's why I wanted to share just one career area with you. This is the document that I sent out. It's the New Mexico Allied Health Careers. In this document, it outlines different types of certifications that, and I'm sorry, my printing is.
Oh, it's helpful. You just flip it.
It's flippable.
Yeah.
If you look at under the length of program, so you see a whole variety of allied health careers: certified nursing assistant, community health worker, EKG tech, home health aide, etc. And when you look on the next page, you see length of program: certified nursing assistant, 4 to 12 weeks, EKG technician, 2 to 6 weeks, home health care, 75 to 120 hours. And you go down this list and you see that these are all in-demand careers in New Mexico. Many of these careers could be in your community. So you wouldn't have to move to Albuquerque or Santa Fe to have this job. You can stay in your community, be grounded, and start a career in the medical profession with just a few weeks. But none of these certifications are covered under the Opportunity Scholarship. So similar issue. We need between 1,200 and 1,600 broadband splicers in the state of New Mexico over the next 5 years to implement, because our tribal nations and pueblos have received the second largest federal contribution towards broadband deployment, behind Alaska, as far as tribal entities. So we have a lot of resources coming into our tribal communities, not to mention what's happening throughout the state, and large investments from the Inflation Reduction Act and others. So we need to train up a lot of folks, or those are all going to be people coming from out of state doing work here in New Mexico. We only have one training program in the state of New Mexico today to train those cable splicers. That's at Santa Fe Community College. It's about a 5-week program. It takes about $10,000. It's not covered under the Opportunity Scholarship. It is covered under WIOA. So that's the Federal Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act funds. We don't get a lot of those funds, and they're very restrictive, and you have to be a US citizen to get access to those funds. What we would like to see happen, especially given the surpluses we have in the state, is that we create a funding mechanism, ideally a trust fund, similar in concept, maybe not as much money, but similar in concept as what was created for the Early Childhood and Education and Care Department Trust Fund, where a certain amount of money is put into a fund until we reach a threshold, and then the interest from that fund is used to pay for certifications that are not degree granting. As well, so similar to WIOA. Because WIOA works very well, but it's just very restricted. We would like to make it much more flexible so that folks who have a different citizen situation could access job training programs, so that our Department of Workforce Solutions could be more creative about how they provide wraparound or support services. So let's take that broadband example, right? If it's a young person who wants to get into, or somebody who's coming back into the workforce even, wants to get into this, become a broadband splicer, but they live in Shiprock. Can they, how difficult and how expensive is that to come and spend 5 weeks in Santa Fe to get and $10,000 for a training program? Let's provide on needs-based additional support for housing, transportation, food, while that person is going through that training program that is so important for our workforce and for growing essential services in New Mexico. So we'd like to see a trust fund developed. We've had very positive, and I will share, you know, we thought that the certification problem had been solved when that language got put into the Opportunity Scholarship.
By we, you don't mean just advocates, but also.
Well, I think everybody,
Yeah.
frankly. But I'll say we, because I can speak for myself at the chamber, we thought it was fixed until we started talking to community colleges who do this training. And they were all saying, no, here's the language, here's how it's interpreted, it doesn't work. And we spoke with chairs of committees in the Senate and in the House. We spoke to the governor's team, and everyone was under the same impression that we had solved that problem last session, and we didn't. So I don't think it would be prudent to open up the Opportunity Scholarship, but instead structure it in a way that mirrors the federal program where it's already staffed, we have rules in place, we know how it works, and it provides state money to do those sort of training programs. So that is something that the chamber is pushing. We think that as you think about how to get everyone involved in the economy, how to make sure that we're doing that at the rural communities all over the state, high demand careers like in medical care or in our broadband splicing, because that's also the same technology that a lot of EV charging units are going to need, that sort of training. We believe that a program like this would ensure that pathway from prenatal to career through college is actually really truly funded, because we do think this is a big gap. And so we'll be pushing for, if not a full kind of structure of that trust fund this year, at least a pilot to start the funding. And then in next year's full budget cycle, to get a full funding for it, a trust fund, or at least a pathway to that. I know that the Independent Community College Association also has a plan around this, and it has some draft language as to kind of building out over 3 years a fund that could fund these sort of things. But I think we have a unique opportunity to set our state up for something that can make us much more competitive for recruiting businesses, because we have a workforce that can be that flexible and quickly trained, very attractive to employers, but also helps our citizens get into the economy and stay in their community and thrive.
Thank you, Rob. Really appreciate it. I was really interested in hearing more about it when we talked over the last month or so. And right now we'll open up to questions from the council. And then if there are community members who have questions, please go ahead and put it in the chat and we will address them. But yeah, we'll just take a moment. Glenn, go for it.
Well, first of all, thanks, Rob. That was, I think that is a great opportunity and a great presentation. We have, as the Santa Fe Green Chamber and New Mexico Sustainable Business, been working with the community college on their certifications and their badges, and we're just now developing a program in New Mexico State for similar programs for businesses, badges. But is there a finite list of certifications that would be eligible for this trust fund? Is it going to be up to each institution? I know that solar and wind, as we found out in Tucumcari, they can't find students, whether it's for 2-year or even certification. So I'm hoping that this can be an extremely broad list. Has there been any discussion about that?
Yes, Glenn, and thank you for the question. It's a good question. The WIOA model is structured around funding the student, not the institution. So which allows for apprenticeships and other types of things versus just giving money to higher ed, which may create a program based off of the teachers they have, not what the students need. And so the other thing about how WIOA funding is structured is there's an accountability metrics built in. If a certain percentage of the students who go through the program do not find employment in this skilled trade that they were trained to be in, the funding will be cut. So there's an accountability to the employers, or sorry, the trainers, to work with employers to make sure they're training students to be job ready in those careers, which is what we want them to be doing, right? So that's the concept, is that it would flow through Department of Workforce Solutions, which is the entity that currently administers WIOA funding. And but it can have that sort of flexibility, Glenn. So let's take, for example, I won't use wind because that's a big investment. That's a big old turbine. Let's use the cable splicing again,
Right.
And say we need something at New Mexico Junior College. The Department of Workforce, employers are saying we need employees down here. We have a high demand. Can we and it's too far to go to Santa Fe to get that training. It would take $250,000 to stand up this program at an MJC because of all the kind of infrastructure you got to build into it, equipment, etc. That would allow the junior college to say, or they would say, this is what it costs. And then Workforce Solutions can say, great, we will fund 25 students at $10,000 a piece to get you to $250,000. And that's how and so it would be a demand-based structure to set those up, but also from an employer side, working with Workforce Solutions to define where are the needed careers from advanced energy, communications to healthcare that are really needed in New Mexico, and making sure that we've got certifications that are industry recognized that we're training people up to.
Yeah. No, that's really helpful. And then just also highlighting a couple things, right? Like if a fund is created with state dollars, then it removes a lot of the barriers to people of varying citizenship status.
Absolutely.
And I also wanted to note that we had invited Somos un Pueblo Unido to present today. Unfortunately, they had a conflict, but I know you are, and also Secretary Nair, are aware of their efforts to remove these barriers to training and access to the programs. So exciting, and hope to hear from them from their perspective at a future meeting. And I also,
well, James, I want to speak to that if I could
Sure,
real
go for
quick. I want to thank you for flagging that issue for me. I was able to go back to Secretary Nair regarding that specifically. And so as we think about it, as we think about what is the ask of the governor's team, the legislature for the budget, whether it's a pilot this year and then on to a full fund or a full fund this year, we would want to build in additional state funded staff for that, because they can't be federally funded staff, not even just the scholarship side, but if it's administered, we need some state dollars to fund those people who, when they're working on the program. So that is something that we talked through, thanks to your flagging that issue.
Absolutely. We've also talked a little bit about wraparound support for people to receive training and that leads to certifications and badges. Could you talk a little bit about wraparound supports and how you see, is it part of this program or does it need to go through another avenue?
The conversations I've had with the secretary are that it could be part of the program, because again, they work to fund students. I think what you would want to do is build in it to make sure that you're using the money effectively, that you're building in probably a needs-based assessment of some sort. That could be done internally, I think, through their own workforce solutions rules. It wouldn't have to be legislated necessarily. I think there could be legislative guidance to that effect. But I do think and is those transportation costs, housing costs, even childcare where it's not covered currently, are barriers for folks to get this sort of certification that can really transform their economic future. So I would, from the chamber side, we'd really like to see that built in to ensure that we're creating that kind of broader equality of opportunity for individuals.
Excellent. Yeah, and I think there are quite a few advocacy organizations out there that can be informative on like what those specific supports need to be in terms of if it were a pilot project, how much what sort of a budget ask would it be, or is that to be determined?
It's somewhat to be determined. I mean, our kind of bold, big ask is we'd like to see $500 million put into a trust fund of surplus funds that we can just pull the interest off of 5% every year. So that you're using that to fund these programs. We will need to see what the demand is. I think the demand may actually be much greater than what we anticipate. We may need to have we will have our Be Pro, Be Proud program running all over the state, marketing these sort of careers. And we've got 15 embedded career counselors through Workforce Solutions in high schools all over the state that will be helping market these opportunities. So I anticipate that, my hope is that we could utilize those funds, but that is part of the benefit of doing it as a pilot. It gives you a sense of the scale and what the need is. But we do not fund this sort of training through our CTE through our workforce programs in New Mexico historically. We've really just relied on federal dollars, and I think that's created a part of the problem of why our young people leave the state. They go to other places where they can get this training. They go to other places where those jobs are. They may not even know that there's all of these medical jobs that they can have in their community. And that's part of what we have to also be doing.
Any other questions from council members or folks attending in public?
I have a question. I was just wondering what the support around this is, if it's like, have you only been in talks with the governor's staff at this time, or do you have any legislative support from representatives at this time?
I'm glad you asked. So I've had conversations with the governor's chief of staff, the governor's advisor to education, Scott Roginski, talked to the speaker, to Chair Small, Vice Chair Dixon, Chair Munoz, and Adrian, his chief of staff, is working on a process. So we've been trying to hit a broad spectrum of both legislators and the fourth floor.
And does it feel like there's interest?
Everyone I've talked to said wait, I thought we fixed that. I can't believe we didn't fix that. We have to fix that. So I think across the board, and I think and Secretary Nair's team, Marcos, her deputy secretary, been working very closely with him because he's intimately knowledgeable about the WIOA process within the state. We did talk to Deputy Secretary Clark as well about whether EDD should administer or Better Workforce Solutions. I think we came down on the Workforce Solution sides because they already have that process of working with employers around WIOA funds. So in fairly short order, we've tried to make this a broad conversation with our policymakers.
Okay, have you had a chance to talk to Representative Rubio on this, just because she's done so much work for these groups here that it might?
I have not.
I think it'd be worth it.
Okay, thank you.
And then in the chat, Samantha Salazar, have you looked into opening up the opportunity grant to New Mexico Guardsmen or reservists? Guardsmen are not allowed to access these funds, which I think is a huge loss for the average age 18 to 25. Samantha's right here.
Yeah, I can talk to you a little more. So
Yeah.
not too long ago, graduated last year, so the opportunity grant was in effect. And now I am a reservist, and a lot of the times, which is great that you're working on doing certificates, because a lot of my soldiers are like, I don't want to go to school for 2 to 4 years. Like, I just want to start working. But one of the things is that, and even if they do want to go to school, they can't access those funds because they have the federal funds through when they do their oath of office, and you get the money as a reservist or a guardsman, but it doesn't pay all. Like, it only pays, I think, 16 or 15 or 1,200 a semester.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually, if they were to access these funds, it's literally more money than what they are receiving for their tuition. And so, and then the other thing is that they want to do a certificate, they can't access it. So that's one of the things right now that I think is a huge loss, is they're like, well, why can't I access these funds? What's going on here? So I think that's something that's really, because the average age is 18 to 25, and they have to stay here in the state because they're New Mexico Guardsmen.
Right. I appreciate you raising that. My understanding is the Opportunity Scholarship is the last piece to the funding puzzle. So if there was federal dollars that help fund your education, the Opportunity Scholarship is supposed to come in and finish out whatever's left. Is that not how it works?
Yeah, no, it's either you get, basically what's happening is you only get the money that you're getting from the guard or the feds if you're a reservist, and the extra, I don't know, because I had a soldier dealing with that, and I was like, because I thought that was the case, that they get the extra, but they don't.
We should follow up on that, because I mean, while we're trying not to go through the Opportunity Scholarship approach, finding gaps in the Opportunity Scholarship, there may be a need to do additional for this particular example that you laid out. If they're going for the 2 and 4 year degree,
yeah,
it seems really illogical that we wouldn't be supporting our service members.
I'm happy to continue that conversation to figure out who we can bring in.
yeah.
Great. So final call for any questions on this topic. All right, thank you, Rob. Really appreciate the background on this. Looking forward to working with you on it. Next item we have is a discussion of follow-up to what we heard in Farmington around some of the projects that were presented to the ETEC committee in San Juan County. I wanted to invite Wendy Adcity just to give any updates that there might be on that, but we may take it up at a different time.
Thank you, Ms. James. I Want to give some updates. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, the updates with this letter that was introduced to bring for this meeting here, it's in a draft form, and I'd like to ask for additional time to bring it to more of the SEAC members so we can review it. And so it's still an ongoing process.
Thank you. Appreciate the update. And we also know that there is, we're watching the ongoing process for how these projects are approved or how they move forward. So we will monitor that. And thank you, Wendy, for the update. The next item on our agenda is to discuss some of our organizing for the rest of the year and also leading into next year. And first thing that I wanted to preview is that we're working to have a joint meeting of the task force and the council in December. We're looking at December 13th or December 14th as a potential meeting date. We will be sure as soon as that date is nailed down to get it out to council members and to give appropriate public notice. We hope that that meeting will be an opportunity to have more of a workshop format addressing a couple different topics that are pertinent and have a short time frame. And so one of those is we've reached out to the New Mexico Economic Development Department, or excuse me, to the New Mexico Environment Department, to Secretary Kenny and others around the Priority Climate Action Plan and the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant, which is a program and grant opportunity that the Environment Department is leading. I wanted to invite Michael, if that's okay, to maybe describe that a little bit more, and also the format that we were thinking of for that joint meeting.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, James, Chair. Yeah. So the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant is one of the big programs being administered by EPA from the Inflation Reduction Act. And the way this has worked is that every state basically had a formula grant available to them, and also the largest 67 metropolitan areas in the country. So states were eligible, and also tribes, by the way. States were eligible to receive $3 million for planning grants, metropolitan areas up to $1 million. Both the state of New Mexico and the city of Albuquerque did apply and receive their planning grants. And what the goal of those grants is to develop a climate pollution reduction program. And so those are due by March 1st. And what is actually due is what's called the Priority Climate Action Plan. So basically the top level things that the state and the city metropolitan area for the city of Albuquerque say, these are the ways that we are going to cut greenhouse gas emissions. And these are the priority areas that we're looking at to be able to do that. And then there's another deadline for April 1st for the states and cities to submit those plans and then enter into a competitive grant process. And EPA is administering up to $500 million to grant out for states and municipalities and tribes to implement their programs. So it's a really big deal because it's probably one of the most comprehensive programs in the IRA related to climate pollution reduction. And so both the city of Albuquerque and NMED are working on developing those plans. Different groups are engaging around community engagement, which is supposed to be a core part of this. And they also both fall under Justice 40 administrative guidelines, which means that 40% of all the investments that come into the state and the city for this have to go to the most directly impacted communities, environmental justice communities, and socioeconomically disadvantaged communities. So NMED, as we said, is working on their climate action plan. And so we thought it was really important for us to, for this body and the set force to talk about that, get an overview of what NMED is thinking in terms of their plan. And then, as James said, kind of workshop it. So how are some of the other agencies engaging around this? What can they do in terms of climate pollution reduction? Transportation is going to be a big piece of this. Housing and energy efficiency could be a big piece. So it is across the board, some of these big areas that they're looking at in terms of how to cut these reductions. And then also there's a role for us as the Sustainable Economy Advisory Council, because community engagement also does have to be a part of that. And this body is pretty, even though it's a fairly small body, generally, it's a pretty representative body because of the different constituencies that are represented here. So for all of these reasons, we thought it would be a good opportunity for both bodies to meet, hear about this, and kind of think through this together before the state submits their plan in March.
Excellent. Thank you, Michael. Any questions from council members on what that process looks like, or what the topic looks like, or how we're approaching it?
Sure.
Rob?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we think about how the goals of the program itself, climate, I get the kind of climate and pollution piece. Is there an economic development piece as well? And could you talk a little bit about what that looks like from I guess from your perspective, or what you were hearing within the context of the city and state?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Councilmember Black and Chairman. Yes, absolutely. I think there's a lot of potential for job creation and economic development. If we're looking at energy efficiency, for instance, if we're looking at as a number of some municipalities, we know, like the city of Albuquerque is looking at electrification of their fleets. We're looking at potentially we can build in workforce development aspects into this. So I think there's a lot of overlap with some of the things that we're already talking about. And for that reason, that's why it should be an interagency conversation, because it's going to overlap with a number of these things. We could even look at housing, as we know that's one of the big issues as well. Is there a way that we could support housing development and doing that in renewable ways in some of these communities that are in need of that? So I think there's an opportunity for us to also be creative about how we can utilize some of these funds, especially if we can access some of the big grant funds that are going to be available in the competitive process. So yeah, I think that's why it'd be good for us to kind of brainstorm some things next month around this.
The time frame for EDD is pretty short.
For submitting the priority action plan, yes, but the overall planning process, what the NMED got funded for, is actually a 4-year planning process. So the state has to submit their priority plans, like, okay, the big picture things. We're going to focus on transportation, energy efficiency, whatever it is that they come up with. But then the planning process continues to think about implementation. How would we actually get a little bit more into the details of how we would utilize those funds? So that's going to go on for a while. But yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunities. We know one of the things we know the state is also thinking about is they're calling them right now transportation super centers, for lack of a better term, or transportation hubs that we could have around the state, where you could have EV charging, whether it's hydrogen refueling, whatever it is, that those things get to be placed around the state. And that's another thing, because that's construction and job creation there as well. So
thank you. That's very helpful. Because I do know that Secretary Kenny's thinking a lot about, especially kind of those transportation corridors. I-40 is the #1 trucking corridor in the country.
Yeah.
That runs right through New Mexico, and that diesel exhaust is something that impacts our communities, both 40 and 25. So figuring out how we decarbonize those hard areas of long haul trucking and transportation is very, very thoughtful. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Any other questions, on this topic?
I don't have a question, I just have like a comment.
Sushani?
Well, I think maybe we could do it in public comment, but I was just thinking for the times of those meetings right now, it's tentatively either gonna be the 12th or 13th of December.
Oh, excuse me, 12th through 13th. I
And
think
then
I said 13th or 14th.
Probably the 12th or 13th of December, the 12th from 3 to 5. The 13th from 9:30 to 11:30.
Sure.
And what we'll do, after the meeting today, and we're working with environment to kind of nail down a date. We might send out a hold to both the task force and the advisory council for both those days, just as a hold while we figure out which day works better.
Great. And we'll work on doing a hybrid, virtual or in person. The other thing I just wanted to highlight is that, Michael Guerrero and Kayla Lucero I am mispronouncing your last name, Matusi.
Everyone does.
That you all will be reaching out to council members, to have individual meetings. And one of those topics is, to really think through the working groups, which we now have the actual staffing to support. And I think that's all for that item. So I'm gonna turn it over
Okay.
to.
I have a
Kayla.
question.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, this
John?
is Jonathan. Yeah, thank you, Chair. For the location of the meeting, the joint meeting next month, do you have a location for that?
No location confirmed, it'll probably be in Albuquerque. If we do an in-person, I think that would just be easiest. And if we do it, we probably just do it at the Marquette building. 500 Marquette Avenue Northwest. I think that if that's what the EDD office is for Albuquerque, and then of course we'll set up, the Zoom as well. So it'll be, yeah. We still also have
thank
to
you.
environment department.
Great.
to figure out what works for them, but we could host the in-person space in Albuquerque.
Thank you. So yeah, Kayla, do you want to go ahead and take it away for the next agenda item?
Yeah, so we've discussed how you all have had so many informative meetings about very relevant topics. And part of adding capacity here in the form of these different positions, including with Michael and myself, is that we're able to bring those conversations together into something that we can act upon. And so we're going to be undertaking a process of synthesizing these prior meetings. And during that process, I'm interested in hearing from the council members. And also if anyone listening in the public has ideas or frameworks that they believe are relevant to our past program of work, please feel free to submit those to me. We're going to put my contact information on our website. So, you know, as we're going through this, I'd love to be in contact with all of you. I may have, you know, being new to this as I am, I might have questions for you, for prior presenters, you know, as we bring this all together. And vice versa, if you have questions or concerns for me, things that you think are particularly relevant, or even top level themes that you believe have been represented, you probably have your ideas about what these past meetings have meant to you. So I'd love to hear from you. And I'm also going to create a set of guiding questions, maybe to inform this process. So I'm going to maybe forward those to you all. And if you have more questions to add to the list, feel free to do so. All in the interest of kind of creating some overarching ideas of what your prior meetings have meant. So you can find my information on the website for communicating about this process.
Thanks, Kayla. And this, again, I'll highlight is we've done quite a few meetings. We've had quite a few presentations. And I look forward to this in helping us create recommendations to go to the task force and other agencies or whoever it is appropriate to get it in front of. So any questions on that, folks? All right, well, look forward to hearing from you guys, from Michael and Kayla.
Oh, and equally from the working groups, if there are themes that arise from those, we're interested in including those inputs as well.
Great, thank you. So I'll just open it up to any final questions from council members, if there are any, or discussion, any items people want to raise. Hearing none, we're gonna just move to public comment and invite folks who are joining online or in the room to either place your questions in the chat or raise your hand, and we will make it possible for you to speak.
Great there, I think. Rose Rushing.
Oh, Rose, Rushing, please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Rose Rushing. I'm an attorney with the Western Environmental Law Center. I was just wondering, I know there wasn't much discussion on it today. I was just wondering if anyone from Economic Development Department has any updates on what the next steps that the department is planning to undergo regarding the ETA funds are, like if they are going to publish an RFP online, or if we can kind of expect any guidance on that front. And thank you for the opportunity, and great meeting. Thank you.
For the ETA funds, I've been directed by leadership that it's still under review, so I don't have any updates on that.
Thank you. Any other questions or public comment?
And then the December meeting for the advisory council, to Wendy's question in the chat. We're gonna do, as James had mentioned, it'll be a joint meeting of the advisory council and task force to do that CPRG, climate pollution reduction grant kind of workshop format, where we'll do a little bit of like learning about the process and then basically going into probably like some feedback, recommendations, and community engagement. And that'll be December 12th or 13th, as we hear back from the environment department. Either the 12th from 3 to 5 p.m. or the 13th from 9:30 to 11:30 a.m. And we will probably send out holds for folks' calendars just to try and hold those times and let you know that we're going to work to make one of those windows work.
Okay, thank you, Shani. And seeing no other requests for public comment or any questions in the Q&A, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank-
This is Atsa.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right. Thank you all for joining, and we are adjourned. We'll see you in December.
Thank you.